Written and directed by Eric Williford. This one stars Victoria Vertuga and Jamie Bernadette. We are talking Cold Blows the Wind. I have to say, I don't know if I like that title. It doesn't sound quite right to me. It should be something along the lines of the cold winds blow or something like that. Cold Blows the Wind. Don't know, it doesn't sound quite right to me, but it is what it is. That's the title of the movie. So let's talk about Cold Blows the Wind and what the plot is. This is going to be one of these films where I will be vague in the plot because it's kind of a horror, thriller, mystery, and part of the fun of this movie, so to speak, is it's unravelling what's kind of going to be happening. So I don't want to be too specific with the plot here. But what can I say? It focuses on this married couple who have rented out some type of house for the weekend out in the country, and it's the wife's birthday, and they are travelling, I'm assuming from a night out back to this kind of holiday home, and on the way back they strike a jogger. Initially they think they killed the jogger and put what they think is his body in the boot of their car, but when they get to this house they find out that the jogger was just knocked unconscious, but they have broken his leg. Now, they are fearful of the repercussions that may come from this because the wife was, we presume, drink driving and things. So the husband decides he's going to murder this guy and bury his body out in the kind of this rural area, which is outside this kind of holiday home. And not long after that, there's a knock on the door, and it's Jamie Bernadette's character, who is a woman claiming that she's escaped from a guy and asking kind of for sanctuary. Now, things take a kind of supernatural turn, is all I'll kind of say here. Jamie Bernadette might be more than she's kind of letting on. This area might have a supernatural kind of property to it. Maybe think along the lines of kind of Pet Sematary to a certain degree. And it's essentially a movie about the supernatural with paranoia, murder, and kind of a mystery. Now, what will happen exactly? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's talk about it. Now, one thing I would say right off the bat as a positive of this film is its originality. Now, that it's often said, and I have reviewed many films which are just a template of another film, of another film, of another film. How many times have we had, a kind of a version of, 10 Little Indians or something along the lines of that, or Jimbo, or the Magnificent Seven, or things like this. There's just been versions of these different kind of stories, So it's nice to see an original film where you just don't know what's going to happen, because it's kind of like, and I'm sure there's similar films out there, but to me this one felt quite fresh. And part of the fun of this movie, as I've said, is that you are going along the ride with this married couple. So you don't really know what's going on. You don't really know what the deal is with Jamie Bernadette's character. Things are hinted at as the film kind of goes on. But there's something up. But you just don't know what exactly. And as the film carries on, we realise the worsening situation these guys are kind of in. So I found the idea intriguing, and it's a good movie that kind of carries you on with it. I think sometimes you get with films where you have no idea what is going on, but the movie wisely, I think, gives you enough information where you understand the situation that these characters are in, and the moral complexities of their kind of situation. But it gives you enough information where you understand their position in it, and then you are along with this couple as the more supernatural elements are kind of folded in. I thought that was quite good. Now, this is a low budget movie. There's not a lot of kind of spectacle in regards to VFX and things like that, but it definitely has a macabre atmosphere. It's one of these things, it's like things are hinted at, and there's elements of a kind of an otherworldly force there, but it's not something overt, but it's enough, I feel, to make you have a feel of that there's greater powers here, and it gives you that feeling that things are in motion that seemingly you can't really comprehend, and kind of going to be out of the control of any human, which gives it a kind of a fear factor. I wouldn't say this movie is necessarily scary exactly, but you fear for you fear for these characters because you feel like they are in way over their heads. And then I would also say, I think the acting, although there are some issues I have with some of the script in regards to the dialogue, But I have to say, I think the acting is solid. I mean, a good example of this is once the husband murders this guy, which the woman is opposed to, you have this kind of unspoken kind of sense of kind of paranoia and distrust that's creeping between these characters. So, you know, the husband, you know, because he has murdered someone now, is like paranoid the wife is going to effectively dob him in. And she's like saying, no, I'm not going to, but it's done like, she never threatens to or anything like that. But the performance is kind of like, you can see the kind of, you know, what's saying behind, like, you understand the guy's paranoid, and you kind of get where, you know, the woman's motivations are as well. So I quite liked that, my acting where it's, you know, it's not just the fact that these actors are saying words, and you know you infer meaning from the words, but it's the way they are acting. You think there's kind of more kind of going on, if that makes sense. So you can kind of, I thought the acting with those things are quite good because they're saying something, but they're actually inferring something else. So I did think that was an interesting kind of idea. The movie has a kind of a slightly kind of sexy tone to it. It's another thing I would kind of say with this. Again, I don't want to sort of say too much in regards to kind of plot-wise, but there is a kind of you know, a sexy thriller element to it. Think like, you know, your 90s kind of style sexual kind of thrillers that you used to get. There's elements up here as well, but it has that kind of that black magic feel and an intrigue. And you know, I found the idea here solid. What doesn't work in this movie, now as I've mentioned, I think the acting is okay. But I do feel that if I had to say the weakest element to this film was probably the script. I will give you a couple of examples here of where I feel the script could have been a little better. So to me, the fact that the husband kills the guy, and that's, you know, early on, so it's not like really a spoiler. It's what sets up the story. I don't know if I was really. I don't know if I was kind of buying that, to be honest. I mean, the guy, they had run over a guy and they had broken his leg. Yes, you're going to get in trouble, but it's not the end of the world at the end, you know, ultimately. And they had done it, so like it wasn't like they were going to get blamed. To me, they should have been he should have been more kind of like in two minds about it, or they should have been doing, like the couple should have been doing something that they didn't want any witnesses to, or it just seemed a little bit, I don't know. I just don't know if most people would have done that, if I'm honest. Or they could have made him like he was, you know, had a proclivity for violence or something like that. I just, down to the moment, I found his decision to do that came a little too quickly, a little too easily, and I just think it just seemed over the top considering the circumstance. And the guy was just had a broken leg at the end of the day, but it really, you know, you're not looking at a huge cost, if that makes sense. And there are other kind of elements where the film, I think, like the dialogue, when Jamie Bernadette's character kind of shows up, you know, and she reveals that she might not know what's going on. It never kind of, I mean, I thought this movie was going to go where, all right, the husband's going to plan to kill her as well, or something like that. Or he's kind of really like, going to, oh, you know, I should have just not done that. But it's never really, they just kind of skip over it. So I think if I had to kind of like have a one main critique with this movie, is I just don't think the script was quite as sharp. So let me give you another example of kind of how I mean to demonstrate this by comparing this to another film. So the film, if you've seen it, called Eden Lake. It's nothing really similar to this film, but there's a part at the end of the film where you have a sequence where people are forced to do something quite bad to cover up for something else. And the drama of that act, I feel, it's right at the end of the movie of Eden Lake, you know, was so impactful. You just thought, oh, God. You know, that was like a really impactful moment. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but if you've seen Eden Lake, you know what I'm talking about. And I feel like they could have had a situation like that here, but it doesn't. So I just think it's lacking a little bit of drama. For example, I think like some of the dialogue seemed a little bit, you know, like just someone's written a script rather than it's like what people actually say. So I think like the acting, I think is okay, but I think the dialogue sometimes of what they say doesn't seem particularly kind of realistic, dramatic or impactful. So it just lessens that. Now this is a lower budget film, clearly. So, you know, ultimately I'm not quite sure how much experience this writer-director has, but for me, I would have either had a second writer to maybe punch up the script or a producer to push back on it to make it just a little bit less goofy or B-movie-ish. And I think it could have had, you could have upped the drama and had it a little bit more impactful. It's not necessarily about, it's more like dialogue sequences and kind of like a context. I feel the actual beats of the story are interesting, and the actual the way the story, you know, pans out is interesting. But it's the smaller moments within the story that I feel could have been punched up to make it more impactful, to make it give you more context about what's going on, and just kind of sharpen up people's reactions or motivations and things like that. Now, the movie is very dialogue driven, so there's not a lot of kind of like, you know, action, so to speak. So visually speaking, it's not the most flashy of films. It is purely really a dialogue film with just the kind of the interactions coming and that kind of like the tension coming from people's relationships with one another. And again, we're going back to that kind of some of the way the movie just lacks a little bit of dramatic tension. I feel, again, means the movie ultimately just lacks that kind of that bite that I think it could have had. I did enjoy the way this movie, it doesn't really tell you everything, but it gives you enough. But I feel maybe there are things that are certainly unexplained that some people may think, I don't really understand why that happened, you know, why it has this kind of Pet Sematary style kind of thing happening to it or something else. You know, so it's not going to give you all the answers. I personally felt it kind of gave you enough for you to understand the plight of our protagonists. But maybe if you want everything answered, this is maybe not going to do all that for you. So overall, though, I have to say I really enjoyed the fact that this was an original story with quite an intriguing through line. And, you know, I quite liked our kind of characters. They're certainly not, you know, altruistic characters who are, you know, goody two-shoes. They are flawed people who seem, you know, selfish. But I kind of quite like that nuance, that kind of like that more, you know, shades of grey in their kind of personality, so to speak. So that I quite enjoyed. So just, I mean, for that and for the fact that I found this movie's plot quite intriguing and the kind of the overarching mystery and sort of sense of kind of paranoia and mystique, I'll give this an above average score of 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? Would you see it based on what I've told you? Please do let me know, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time.